I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing Amanda Palmer. She didn't ask me to do so, so I'm not going to do it. And, so she's going to play herself in. So everyone, please welcome to Google the Authors At program. Authors At, but you can sing too, right? I mean, you're musical. Please join me in welcoming Amanda Palmer to Google.
Hi. I'm not sure what to do. You guys are all at work. I've been. You're not? No. What are you doing here? Why are you at Google? She's your date. Are you guys? Are most of you in the middle of your workday? Except for you. Okay, I know. Shh. What can I do for you? What would you like? Because I have read and sing. Do a little bit of both. Okay, I want to alleviate you of whatever needs alleviation. Okay. I don't actually play the ukulele, a fact of which I am proud. And if you want, I can give you, I've been giving little flash ukulele lessons to people. I'm actually, now that I can maybe quit my day job, which, whatever, if you know me, it would be funny. I'm thinking of just whoring myself out to different corporations as a ukulele healer. It's just like going, from Google to Twitter to Microsoft and, bringing like giant truckloads of ukuleles and teaching everyone on staff the basic 3 chords that you need to know to play all rock songs ever at lunch hour. In my mind, in a future 5 years from now, I'm 120 pounds. And I never get hungover because I will be the picture of discipline, never minding what state I'm in. And I will be someone I admire. And it's funny how I imagined that I would be that person now, but it does not seem to have happened. Maybe I've just forgotten how to see that I'm not exactly the person that I thought I'd be. And in my mind, in the faraway here and now, I've become in control somehow. And I never lose my wallet because I will be the picture of discipline, never fucking up anything. And I'll be a good defensive driver. And it's funny how I imagined that I would be that person now, but it does not seem to have happened. Maybe I've just forgotten how to see that I'm not exactly the person that I want to be. And in my mind, when I'm old, I am beautiful, planting tulips and vegetables, which I will mindfully watch over. Not like me now, I'm so busy with everything that I don't look at anything. But I'm sure I'll look when I am older. And it's funny how I imagined that I would be that person now, but that's not what I want. If that's what I wanted, then I'd be giving up somehow. How strange to see that I don't want to be the person that I want to be. And in my mind, I imagine so many things. things that aren't really happening. And when they put me in the ground, I'll start pounding the lid, saying I haven't finished yet. I still have a tattoo to get that says I'm living in the moment. And it's funny how I imagined that I would win this winless fight, but maybe it really isn't funny that I've been fighting all my life. But maybe I have to think it's funny if I want to live before I die. And maybe it's funniest of all to think I'll die before I actually see that I am exactly the person that I want to be. Exactly the person that I want to be. Thank you. So, what's better for you guys, if I read here or at the reading thing? This is good? Okay, then I'm not moving. I just landed here from Portland. I did a reading and a show in Portland last night that was really wonderful, and I'm doing one tonight and tomorrow in this area. And I've been doing nothing for like a week and change, but just like this book and signing it and talking about it. And I've had all these fantastic interview guests every night of tour, and all of these incredible discussions about the internet, mostly like the topic with all these people who are my friends and other artists, the topic keeps just snaking back to internet trolling. Especially like if the guest I have on stage has any kind of following, or is even just a small local artist, it seems to be like the bane of everyone's existence. And what do we do about it? And how do we deal with a culture that seems to be addicted to outrage? And can you guys fix that? I'm asking for real. Like, is that maybe that's not actually a good idea. Don't fix. Yeah. Okay. If you have ideas, though, talk to me, because it's a pain in my ass. And my friend's ass is... What?
We try not controlling people's speech here.
What does that mean?
If people want to say stuff, by and large, we're not going to... the internet's free and all that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting that Google should just, become this this giant fascistic censor that would be bad. It would be fun to create a nice filter. If you decide one day you could just surf the nice internet. That might be hard to do.
Well, we could do a lot more restorative justice type stuff. Try to encourage people to hash it out in a nice way.
I do that. I mean, I do that a lot.
In a nice way somewhere else,
Yeah, it can be really hard trying to direct angry traffic, and that can sometimes be a really losing battle. But I kind of do. I write about it a lot in the book. This is a section of the book that takes place towards the end, and I'm just going to read it. I loved being the center of attention when I was a kid, and I still do. And sometimes it makes wonderful things happen. Like when I convinced the neighborhood girls to enact an a cappella production of Fiddler on the Roof on my back porch. I played Tevye, obviously. And sometimes it made terrible things happen. Like when I wore a bra to school, Madonna style, on the outside of my dress and got sent to the principal's office, and the principal delivered a lecture that I would absolutely kill to have a recording of, just to be able to use the line, "You think you're so special, Amanda, but you're not actually special," in my techno remix of Creep by Radiohead. As I moved through my life as a street performing statue and later as a musician, I started to understand something. There's a difference between wanting to be looked at and wanting to be seen. When you're looked at, your eyes can stay blissfully closed. You suck energy. You steal the spotlight. But when you're seen, your eyes must be open as you are seeing and recognizing your witness. You accept energy, but you generate energy. You create light. One is exhibitionism, the other is connection. Not everybody wants to be looked at, but everybody wants to be seen. Following the success of my TED Talk, Microsoft called. I don't know why I was expecting a reaction, but just like crickets. Okay. No, it's cool. It's cool. Okay, good. Fine. Microsoft called. They were offering to fly me to Seattle to speak to a group of women who worked there. Apparently, a whopping 16% of the employees at Microsoft were female. I asked the speaker coordinator what I would be speaking about. Whatever you want, she said. And I started to panic. I had no idea what to talk about. Crowdsourcing, music. Surely I could wax poetic for a half an hour about something, but these women were actually smart. And the fraud police were paying me a call. Fraud police is my own personal version of, what y'all might call imposter syndrome. So for 2 months, I avoided coming up with an idea worth Microsofting. And the night before the talk, I was pacing frantically around Jason Webley's Seattle houseboat, where I was staying, still having written nothing, when it occurred to me. My mother. She'd been retired for a decade, but she'd worked as a freelancer for almost 40 years, applying her math whiz brain to the emerging field of computer programming. And growing up, I'd had no idea what she actually did all day after she threw her heels in a bag and drove her car into the rush hour traffic. And whenever she started trying to explain to me what her job entailed, the words blurred into a wall of noise. I hadn't called my mother in a while, but now I had something to ask her, and I needed her. She talked for 2 hours straight while I furiously scribbled notes about what it was like for her to be one of the only female computer programmers at various companies around Boston in the 60s and 70s. I poured myself a glass of wine. On the other end of the phone, on the opposite side of the country, so did my mom. And for the first time, in earnest, it was like we were drinking together. I listened to her stories about the sexism and the judgment and the weird harassment. She told me the story about the guy she programmed with who got fired for looking at too much porn on his office computer. In 1970? No, honey. This was way later when we were working on Y2K. There was internet porn by then. I couldn't believe my mother had just said the words internet porn. And I asked for more stories. Well, you had to work harder than the men just to keep the job, she said, matter-of-factly. And, you had to be perfect. The way she said it hit a nerve. What kind of perfect? Well, if a guy messed up a project, there was always another job waiting for him, but a woman, forget it, you'd never get a job in that town again. And Boston was a small town. There were only a few of us, and the men all stuck together. And she told me the story of the accountant, Jerry, who paid all the male freelancers on time but kept withholding her paycheck, claiming offhandedly that because she had a husband, she probably didn't need the money as badly as the men did. She asked nicely for months, persistently, and a check she was owed still didn't arrive. So one day, she called him up. At 6:02, she said, when I knew the switchboard operator had gone home for the day and I would get him directly. And she said, "Hi, Jerry, it's Kathy. Just wondering when we're going to be able to process that check. It's 8 weeks late." And when Jerry made some grumblings about how they would send it out as soon as possible, my mother said, "What are you having for dinner tonight, Jerry?" I love my mom so much. And Jerry said, "Excuse me?" And my mother said, I need that money to buy groceries to feed my family, and if you don't cut my check, I'm coming to your house for dinner tonight. And I don't like salmon, and I don't like peas. The check was on her desk the next day. I'd never known any of this stuff, but then again, I'd never asked. And as we were wrapping up our 2-hour conversation and well into our second or possibly third glasses of wine, she said, you know, Amanda, one thing always bothered me. Something you said when you were a teenager. Whatever this was going to be, it was not good. I was a terrible teenager. An explosion of hormones and nihilism. What, Mom? She can do this imitation of me as a teenager that makes me want to crawl under a table. And she did it now. You said, Mom, I'm a real artist and you're not. Oh, God. And then she added more kindly, you know, Amanda, you were just being a typical teenager. I winced, and I felt my neck tighten and my teeth grit down into mother fight or flight mode. And she continued, but you know, Amanda, you would say, I'm an artist. Fuck you, Mom. What do you know? You're just a computer programmer. I had to admit, I could totally imagine myself saying that as a teenager. Maybe not the fuck you, Mom part, but still. And then my mother said something that absolutely demolished my defensiveness. And I don't think in all the years I've known her that I've ever heard her sound more vulnerable. You know, Amanda, it always bothered me because you can't see my art. But I'm one of the best artists I know. And it's just that no one could see the beautiful things I made because you couldn't hang them in a gallery. And then there was a pause. And I took in a deep breath. God, Mom, I'm sorry. And she laughed, and her voice turned to cheerful again. Oh, don't worry, sweetie, you were 13. As I related this story the next morning to a small theater filled with 200 women of Microsoft, I added a confession, which was that in all my years of rock and roll touring around and supporting people and advocating for women and giving all these strangers and fans permission to embrace their inner fucking artists and to express themselves fully and look at their own work and lives as beautiful, unique, creative acts, I'd somehow excluded my own mother. And maybe, by extension, a whole lot of other people. And I looked out at the women of Microsoft, seeing present-day versions of my 1970s programmer mom. Maybe they all felt thoroughly misunderstood by their own bitchy teenage wannabe poet daughters. Who knew? So I thought about all the things she told me over the phone, I said to the room. And I thought about her work that I couldn't possibly comprehend, about the actual creative work she had done. All of that delicate handmade programming she did into the dead of night to switch one platform to another on some critical company deadline. How outside the box she said that she would think and venture to fix a problem, and how insanely proud she felt when it worked. And the true beauty of those things. And the sadness, too, because nobody ever, clapped for her at the end of the night. And as I looked out into the audience, I saw that 3 or 4 of the women of Microsoft were sniffling and dabbing their eyes. And my own throat tightened up. And she couldn't hang her work on a wall. I can. I do my art in public, and people applaud all the time. And my mom never really got that. And she's retired now. After the talk, I hugged a handful of the women of Microsoft, got back in my rental car, turned the radio up to 11, and peeled out of the office park. Take that, fraud police. Do you guys want one more? Or do you want to ask questions? It's really up to you. I'm here for you guys. You want another one? Okay. is a shorter one, but I think you'll like it. While I was working on the first draft of this book, which I did over a few thousand coffees in various cafes in Melbourne over about 7 weeks, I shared a coffee with Samantha Buckingham, an Australian indie guitarist, and during the coffee I picked her brain about her process and her relationship with her own fan base. Sam is typical of a lot of indie musicians eking out a living. She's not on a label, she crowdfunds, and she releases music directly to the internet. And she plays house parties in her fans' living rooms. We were comparing notes about the pros and cons of Patreon.com, which is a new subscription service Sam was using, which allows fans to automatically deposit money into a musician's account every single time the musician releases a piece of content. Kind of like a Book of the Month club for weirdos. And the artist can then rely on a somewhat predictable income instead of praying that their Kickstarter will get funded every single time they have something to release or make. And at the time of this writing, she's got 44 patrons, including 19 $1 backers and one backer at $50, and is paid about $200 every time she releases a song. Patrons can choose how much they pay per song, and they can cap their monthly bill so she doesn't all of a sudden dump 1,000 songs on them and run off to Mexico. Although running off to Mexico when you're Australian seems weird because far. So I'm thinking she would more like run off to Papua New Guinea or something like that. Sam was, in fact, about to travel to Asia with her boyfriend, and she was fretting about what her backers would think if she continued releasing her songs on a schedule on the Patreon website while she was on vacation. She was worried that posting pictures of herself sipping a Mai Tai while simultaneously releasing content for money was going to make her look like an asshole. What does it matter where you are, whether you're drinking a coffee, a Mai Tai, or a bottle of water, I asked. Aren't they paying for your songs so you can also live? And doesn't living include wandering and collecting emotions and possibly drinking a Mai Tai so that you've got stuff to write about, not just sitting in a blank white room and writing songs without ever leaving the house? I told Sam about another songwriter friend of mine, Kim Bookbinder, who runs her own direct support website through which her fans pay her monthly at levels from $5 to $1,000. She also has a running online wish list of musical gear and costumes, like a wedding registry to which her fans can contribute any time. Kim had told me a few days before that she doesn't mind charging her backers during what she calls her staring at the wall time, which she thinks is essential to have before she can write a new batch of songs. And her fans don't complain. They trust her. These are new forms of patronage, and it's messy. The artists and the patrons are making up the rules as they go along, but whether these artists are using crowdfunding or subscriptions or pay-per-piece of content pledge services, it doesn't matter. The fundamental building blocks of these relationships boil down to the same thing: trust. If you're going to ask your fans to support you, you as the artist, it doesn't really matter what your choices are, as long as you're delivering your side of the bargain. And you might be spending their money on guitar picks or on Mai Tais or baby formula or college loans or coffee, as long as the art is coming out the other side and making the people who have paid for it happy. The money that you need to live, and need to live is hard to define, is almost indistinguishable from the money you need to make art. Like me, Sam, and thousands of new school artists, Kim is in daily communication with her fan base, and her ongoing arrangement with her 200 supporters functions because she shares her songwriting process and her bad days and her heartaches and her travels. And so they trust her decisions. And when she posts a photo of herself in a vintage dress she just bought, nobody scolds her for spending money on something other than effects pedals. It's not like her fans' money is an allowance with nosy and critical strings attached. It's a gift in the form of money in exchange for her gift in the form of music. The relative values are messy, but if we accept the messiness, we're fine. If Beck needs to moisturize his cuticles with truffle oil in order to play guitar tracks on his new crowdfunded album, I technically shouldn't care if the money that I've fronted him isn't going towards 2 turntables or a microphone. Just as long as the art gets made, I get the album and Beck doesn't die. But that doesn't mean observers are going to stop criticizing artists and their processes anytime soon. No less than Henry David Thoreau has been called a poser. Thoreau wrote in painstaking detail about how he chose to remove himself from society, to live by his own means in a little 10 by 15 foot hand-hewn cabin on the side of a pond. But what he left out of Walden, however, was the fact that the land he built on was borrowed from his wealthy neighbor, that his pal Ralph had him over for dinner all the time, and that every Sunday Thoreau's mother and sister brought him a basket of freshly baked goods, including donuts. The idea of Thoreau gazing thoughtfully over the expanse of transcendental Walden Pond, a bluebird alighting on his threadbare shoe, all the while eating donuts that his mom brought him, just doesn't jibe with most people's picture of him as a self-reliant, noble, marrow-sucking, back-to-the-woods folk hipster. In the book An Underground Education, Richard Zacks declares, "Let it be known that Nature Boy went home on weekends to raid the family cookie jar." Thoreau also lived at Walden for a total of 2 or 3 years, but he condensed the book down to a single year, to the 4 seasons, to make the book flow better, to work as a piece of art, and to best reflect his emotional experience, a poetic license that I also took with this book. And I told this story to Sam over our coffees. "Poor Thoreau," said Sam. "The donuts are totally the Mai Tai." Taking the donuts is hard for a lot of people, and it's not the act of taking that's so difficult. It's more the fear of what other people are going to think when they see us slaving away at our manuscript about the pure transcendence of nature while munching on somebody else's donut. Maybe it comes back to that same old issue. We just can't see what we do as important enough to merit the help, the love. Try picture getting angry at Einstein devouring a donut brought to him by his assistant while he sat slaving on the theory of relativity. Try picture getting angry at Florence Nightingale for snacking on a donut while taking a break from tirelessly helping the sick. These are difficult things to do. So a plea to the artists and the creators, the scientists, nonprofit runners, librarians, strange thinkers, start-uppers, programmers, inventors, to all the people everywhere afraid to accept the help in whatever form it's appearing, please take the donuts. To the guy in my opening band, too ashamed to go out into the crowd and accept money in his hat, even though people wanted to give it, take the donuts. And to the girl who spent her 20s as a street performer and a stripper, living on $700 a month, who went on to marry a best-selling author, whom she loves, unquestioningly. But even that massive love can't break her unwillingness to accept his help. Please, everybody, please just take the fucking donuts. Thank you. How much time have we got?
20 minutes.
Great. Let's just talk for 20 minutes. Okay. Yeah. And if any of you guys want to grab a book and get it signed, I'll take a couple minutes at the end to do that. I'm happy to do that. Yeah. If you have a question, use the mic. Hi.
Hey, Amanda. I'm curious how this has been for you to go from a street performer to an ever-growing circle of influence, and how that's changed the way you interact with the world and the responsibility that maybe comes with that.
The responsibility that comes with what?
With having influence and people following what you do and what you say.
Yeah. Well, those are kind of two different questions, I think, but I guess they're related. I mean, I think to distill it down, one of the things that that happened gradually as I street performed for 5-6 years is I just became really comfortable. It's and I tell musicians this a lot. It's it really breaks you in a certain way, in a good way, I think, to be a street performer, because there's no stage and there's nobody taking care of you. And you just can't have any sense of entitlement because you're in the fucking street and like there's billions of people passing by. And if you spend an ounce of energy getting angry at the thousands of people who aren't stopping, you can't do your job and attract the one person who does want to stop and give you $1. So you're really like, you're shaped into this different kind of vessel that just doesn't happen. You know, even starting off in a band, it's a way safer space being in a bar on a stage. Even if people are talking and, you know, not paying attention to you, it's not like the street where it's just like it's you versus all of humanity. And I think it's really good for a musician's ego and general stage presence, which is like, this is so much easier than the street. You know, you at some point during the day you chose to be here. And so I've already won. I don't have to sit here and win you over and convince you to sit down. And I think that kind of comfortableness just came with me. I took that kind of comfortableness onto my blog and onto the internet and then out on the road with the Dresden Dolls. And, you know, I was so thrilled to just have any human entities coming to me by choice. That was thrilling. And it's why it's always been pretty easy for me not to focus on the people who don't like my music or don't like me or don't like the way I do things. I'm like, that's fine. You know, you guys are in the typical 99% of the population passing by, and you know, the people who criticize and troll me just remind me of the people who would like take time out of their day to be like, you suck. And you're just like, okay. You know, there's a little circle of people around me watching, you know, what I'm doing and enjoying it. And I know that my job is to just pay attention to them. And I think this can be like intellectually something that artists know, but emotionally it can be really hard to get to that place. That you just are dealing in a relationship with those who want to be there, who are appreciating your work, who appreciate you, and not spending your time like shaking your fist at the rest of humanity, because that can be so tempting. And I think the street really prepared me for that. And you know, as far as the responsibility goes, I actually write about that in the book. I talk about how sort of unwieldy that was in the beginning, and how I fucked up plenty in the early days. And when I was in New York about a week ago, my guest was Brandon Stanton. Do you guys know him? He runs a blog called Humans of New York that's just wonderful. And we shared our stories of like clumsily wielding the hammer of justice when we first had blog power, and like thinking that we could use our blogs and our newfound platform of fans to like, you know, go out and sort of be like justice-seeking superheroes anytime we saw and how stupid that was, because it doesn't really work. And I have an anecdote. He told a great anecdote about in the early days of Humans of New York. He asked this woman if he could take a picture of her, and she was really excited to do it, but her boyfriend sidled in and was like, no, don't do this thing with this guy. And she was like, but I want to do it. I said, yes, I want to do it. Leave me alone. Let me do it. And the guy wouldn't allow her to do it and like photobombed the picture with his arm around her, making a really stupid face. And Brandon was so irritated by this entire exchange that he just told the entire story of everything that had happened and then posted the picture of them. And it got millions and millions of hits, and the guy became a villain. Like, he was now the most hated man in New York. And he now had his own, like, you know, sub-sites of hatred directed against it. And I had my own moments like that on my blog. I tell a story in the book, my first real taste of mishandling crowd power. I was very, very small. I had just started my blog, but I knew I had a few hundred really dedicated readers. And we had just gotten our first label check, our advance, and we were like, you know, on top of the world and feeling legitimate all of a sudden because we'd finally gotten signed. And Brian went off and bought a really fancy drum kit for the first time in his life, and I had a budget to go get a piano. And I was thrilled. It was like the first time in my life I had money. And I was like, I have money, I have power, I'm gonna go buy a piano and I'm real, ah! And I shopped all over Boston, and then one day I went to a store in Brookline, and it was like a little mom and pop piano shop, and I went in, and I had been sort of comparison shopping all over town, and I sat down at this piano, and I started playing some like really loud Dresden Dolls songs. And there was like 2 other people in the shop. And this guy came up to me, the meek piano shop owner came up to me and said, "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. I'm sorry." And I was like, "But I'm real. And I went home and I blogged about it and I gave the guy's address. And I was like, if you want to stand up for what's right, write them a letter about who I really am. And I was 25 or something like, and I was so hurt. And it's such a perfect example of like, I was just this wounded, weeping mass of pus. And, I had a choice in that moment. I could deal with it, or I could lash out to the only possible object of, that I could aim at. And it was this guy. And the next day, I checked, and this was back when I just emailed directly back and forth with all my fans. And like 5 people had written me proud emails being like, I wrote him a 3-page letter about how amazing you are and how wonderful your music is and what a dick he is. And I was like, oh my God, I'm now going to ruin this guy's life. I have to put a stop to this. So I like took the address off the blog and wrote like a cease and desist to my fans and was like, that was a really weak moment. Please don't bother the guy. He doesn't deserve your vitriol any more than I deserved his. And that was one of those, and I had a few of those early days. And I feel like I see so much negativity and nastiness on social media and on blogs and in online journalism. Like, it's so shitty. And it just cycles and gets worse and worse by the day. Like, I almost feel like I can't go on the internet without losing my mind nowadays. And I think, people don't realize, even just by making a snarky, offhanded comment, they're contributing to the cesspool of the internet. And so, I feel like if I have a responsibility at all, it's just to remind people you have a choice. You can live a life of outrage and constantly look around the internet looking at who you can be pissed off at, or you can not. And you can just back away and, have those angry conversations in bars with your angry friends.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here. So you've talked about connecting with people and your experiences with the diverse people you've met, and I feel very sheltered in the tech world, and generally having been to a top university and then coming to Google, and I'm wondering if you have any tips or thoughts on how to reach out to different people or connect with more people than just those who are just like me and already around me.
Wait, do you really feel like the people of Google are just like you?
In certain ways, yes. I mean, they come from different backgrounds, but they're here because they reason about things in similar ways as me, and they think in similar ways to me. And I think we try really hard to get diversity, but we get diversity that all contributes to tech. Right. And so it's diverse in the domain it needs to be, but I think it's still narrowing.
Well, I mean, the obvious answer, and it may not, it may seem like a stupid answer, but I mean, how much time do you spend outside of work? Period. Because it may just be that the change of environment is more about what you need. I mean, I feel the same thing in my life sometimes, especially on tour, where I'm in a bubble of Amanda Palmer fans, right? Which is not a very, I mean, they're diverse in their own way, but when they interact with me, they're not fucking diverse. When they interact with me, all they want to talk about is Amanda Palmer. And that can get really irritating. Not that I don't, want to give them what they want, but they don't generally come up to me and just, chat about, other totally unrelated, interesting things. And And so I go out of my way to stay connected with those outside of my bubble. Also, just so I don't start living my life with, with celebrity blinders on. Because that's, I mean, I feel like, and I feel like that has happened to me, and I have to constantly self-police so that I don't just turn into like a machine of my own ego. And, and I look around at my life and like who feeds me and what friends I have from other areas who don't give a shit about, the capital Amanda Palmer, who just know me as a person, and I reach out to them and I email them and I text them and I try to stay in touch with people outside of my bubble just to make sure I remind myself on a daily basis that I am actually not very special. Like, I'm special to these people in this building who bought a ticket to see me, but that's a very small sliver of the population. And and even though my ego is wonderfully fed by it and I think it's fantastic, it's not a representation of the world at large. And so, whoever your friends were pre-Google or whoever is around you in your, in your environments outside work, like making actual friends with those people is probably, a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if you got the book, it just hit the bestseller list yesterday, which is like thank you. And that was against all odds. I wasn't expecting it necessarily to, because it wasn't sold on Amazon, because the book's on fucking Hachette. And so if you were following the Amazon Hachette wars, I was one of the prime victims of that war, and my fans went crazy helping me promote the book, and it was one of the like best sold books in indie bookstores last week, because my fans just like grassrooted the shit out of it. So it's still not easily available on Amazon, but it's getting there. But you guys can really do me a solid, and like, if you like it, spread it around or pass the copy on. And it's also an audiobook, it's an ebook, it's all the various books that exist. And yeah, and if he doesn't make it here and you happen to run into Michael Gaiman, my stepson who works here, give him a hug for me. You'll embarrass him. It would be great.
Thank you very much for speaking with us
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys.